So the United States invasion of Venezuela has sparked a global firestorm that's raising genuine alarms about World War III and what Donald Trump dismissed as a regional military action that major powers would tolerate has instead triggered cascading international tensions that have brought nuclear-armed nations into direct confrontation and created the most dangerous moment for global conflict since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Trump launched his Venezuela invasion expecting that Russia and China would issue rhetorical objections, but would ultimately accept American military action in its sphere of influence, that regional powers would remain neutral or passive, and that the international response would be limited to diplomatic protests that wouldn't translate into actions threatening broader conflict. Whether it was confidence that nuclear deterrence meant great powers wouldn't risk direct confrontation over Venezuela, beliefs that other nations' interests in avoiding conflict would prevent escalation, or assumptions that American military dominance would deter any serious opposition. Trump's approach was based on the expectation that his Venezuela operation would remain contained to that theater and that global stability would be maintained despite American aggression. But guess what? The invasion has instead triggered a global firestorm where Russia has moved nuclear-capable forces to positions threatening NATO, where China has conducted major military exercises simulating the Taiwan invasion while warning against us interference, where Iran has threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz if America continues Venezuela operations, and where nuclear-armed powers are coordinating opposition to the United States in ways that create compound risks of miscalculation and uncontrolled escalation. And it's honestly hard to believe that Trump's Venezuela invasion has brought the world closer to World War III than at any point in decades. This isn't just about countries expressing concern or conducting routine military activities. We're talking about Russia deploying hypersonic missile systems to positions where they can strike European capitals with minutes of warning about China massing invasion-capable forces across from Taiwan, while explicitly linking their actions to U.S. aggression in Venezuela, about Iran moving anti-ship missiles to positions threatening global oil supplies while declaring solidarity with Venezuela, and about North Korea conducting missile tests while threatening to support any country resisting American imperialism. This includes multiple incidents where Russian and NATO forces have come within dangerous proximity in ways that risk accidental conflict. Chinese military aircraft entering Taiwan's airspace in unprecedented numbers, creating risk of defensive shootdowns that could trigger wider war. Iranian attacks on shipping in the Persian Gulf that have already resulted in casualties, and coordination between these nuclear-armed powers that suggests they're deliberately using Venezuela crisis to challenge American power in ways that could spiral into global conflict. And trust me, the global firestorm that Trump's Venezuela invasion has sparked represents the most dangerous international situation in generations, with genuine World War III taction risks that grow more severe as the Venezuela operation continues and as opposing nuclear powers coordinate their challenges to American actions. If you want to understand how Trump's regional invasion sparked global crisis, what specific actions by nuclear powers are raising World War III alarms, and why experts believe we're living through the most dangerous moment for global conflict in decades, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because this story reveals how local military actions can cascade into global confrontations when great powers are already in competition. Let me fill you in on what specific actions by Russia, China, Iran, and other powers have sparked the global firestorm, how these actions compound to create World War III risks, and why Trump's Venezuela invasion may have triggered the crisis that leads to global conflict. So we need to talk about the specific, provocative, and dangerous actions that nuclear-armed powers have taken in response to American invasion of Venezuela, and how these actions create cascading risks that could spiral into World War III. According to military intelligence, diplomatic reports, and international security analysts, Russia, China, and Iran have each taken actions since mid-February that dramatically raise tensions in their respective regions, that appear coordinated to maximize pressure on the United States, and that create multiple flashpoints where miscalculation could trigger broader conflict. Now, here's the situation with great power competition and how regional conflicts can cascade into global wars. Throughout history, major wars have often started not because great powers directly attacked each other, but because regional conflicts drew in rival powers with competing interests, creating escalation dynamics where commitments, alliances, and prestige led nations into conflicts they didn't initially want. World War I began with regional conflict in Balkans that drew in great powers through alliance commitments and escalation. The risk of World War III has always been that some regional conflict would draw in the United States and rival nuclear powers in ways that create escalation pressures stronger than desire to avoid war. But Trump's Venezuela invasion has created exactly the kind of regional conflict that draws in rival great powers with incentives to challenge American actions. Russia sees opportunity to demonstrate that American military power can be contested. China sees moment to advance its interests while U.S. is distracted. Iran sees chance to coordinate with others challenging American dominance. And each power is taking actions in its region that raise tensions, while the United States lacks capacity to respond to all simultaneously. The compound effect creates multiple potential triggers for escalation into broader conflict. But here's where the rubber meets the road. These aren't isolated actions by individual powers acting independently. Intelligence suggests Russia, China, and Iran are coordinating their responses to create maximum pressure on the United States at a moment of maximum American vulnerability. The timing of provocations is synchronized, and the rhetoric links their actions explicitly to American aggression in Venezuela. And the compound effect is to create multiple simultaneous crises that overwhelm American capacity to respond. This coordination raises risks because it suggests deliberate strategy to challenge American power in ways that could lead to miscalculation. We're now looking at a situation where Trump's Venezuela invasion has triggered the global firestorm that foreign policy experts have warned about for years, where nuclear-armed rivals are simultaneously challenging American power in ways that create genuine World War III risks, and where the mechanisms for managing great power competition have broken down under pressure of multiple compound crises. The situation is as dangerous as any moment since the Cold War, and arguably more dangerous because multiple nuclear powers are involved simultaneously. This is all unfolding because Trump launched military operation without considering how rivals would respond, because American actions in Venezuela have been so provocative that they've given Russia, China, and Iran justification for their own provocative actions. And because U.S. is now overstretched and unable to respond effectively to challenges in multiple theaters simultaneously. The global firestorm results from American aggression meeting rival power, opportunism, and guess who's caught right in the middle of this potential slide toward World War III? American military personnel deployed in multiple theaters facing nuclear-armed adversaries, U.S. diplomatic officials trying desperately to prevent escalation while their president's actions fuel it, American citizens who face nuclear threats that grow more serious daily, and Trump himself, who has created the most dangerous international crisis in generations through reckless military adventurism. They're all dealing with the consequences of actions that have brought world to brink of catastrophic conflict. Trump is supposed to be the president who avoids foreign entanglements and who keeps America safe from unnecessary conflicts. But here's the kicker. His Venezuela invasion has created the foreign entanglement that threatens to engulf the world and has made America less safe by triggering responses from nuclear rivals that create genuine existential risks. The global firestorm contradicts every claim Trump made about his foreign policy approach. And before we go any further, let's be real for a second. When experts who study nuclear risk and great power conflicts start warning about World War III, when the specific actions by nuclear powers create risk comparable to past crises that nearly led to war, these warnings should be taken seriously rather than dismissed as alarmism. The global firestorm sparked by Venezuela invasion represents genuine threat to global stability and potentially to human survival. Now back to the matter at hand. The specific actions by Russia, China, and Iran that have sparked the global firestorm demonstrate both the severity of the crisis and the coordination between powers challenging the United States. Reports from mid-February revealed that Russia has deployed hypersonic missile systems, including Kinzhal and Zircon missiles, to positions in Belarus and Kaliningrad where they can strike European capitals, including Berlin, Paris, and London, with flight times measured in minutes rather than hours, according to NATO intelligence and Russian statements. These deployments are explicitly framed as a response to American aggression in Venezuela and as warning that Russia will defend its allies against U.S. military action. The missiles represent incredible threat to NATO capitals and create conditions where miscalculation or accident could trigger devastating European war. The significance of Russian hypersonic missile deployments is that they represent qualitative escalation in threats to NATO and that they compress warning and decision time to levels where rational crisis management becomes difficult. When missiles can strike capitals in minutes, when leaders have essentially no time to assess situations before deciding on responses, the risks of catastrophic miscalculation multiply. Russian actions have deliberately created hair-trigger situation in Europe justified by American actions in Venezuela. China has conducted the largest military exercises in decades, simulating amphibious invasion of Taiwan with hundreds of vessels, thousands of aircraft, and massive ground forces practicing operations that would be required for actual Taiwan assault. According to intelligence assessments and Chinese official statements, the exercises are explicitly linked to American aggression in Venezuela and include warnings that China will not tolerate U.S. interference if China determines Taiwan reunification is necessary. Chinese forces have entered Taiwan's air defense identification zone in unprecedented numbers, creating dozens of incidents daily where Taiwan must decide whether to treat Chinese aircraft as threats requiring defensive action. Secretary of State Marco Rubio held emergency press conference on March 7th, attempting to downplay the global firestorm sparked by Venezuela invasion. According to media reports, Rubio claimed that Russian, Chinese, and Iranian actions were routine military activities that happened to coincide with Venezuela operations. And that linkage between American invasion and rival power responses was exaggerated by media seeking to undermine presidents. When reporters pointed out that Russia, China, and Iran had all explicitly stated their actions were responses to U.S. aggression in Venezuela, that the coordination and timing suggested deliberate strategy, and that military experts uniformly described the situation as most dangerous in decades, Rubio became defensive and suggested that American retreat from Venezuela would only embolden adversaries further. Talk about a Secretary of State unable to acknowledge that American actions have triggered global crisis and unable to articulate strategy for preventing escalation. Essentially, Russia, China, and Iran have each taken provocative actions in their regions that create risks of conflict with the United States and its allies that are explicitly justified as responses to American Venezuela invasion, and that appear coordinated to create compound pressure on us. The global firestorm is deliberate strategy by rival powers to exploit American vulnerability. And this wasn't just normal great power competition or routine military posturing. The specific actions taken represent qualitative escalation in tensions and risks. Russian hypersonic deployments threaten NATO capitals in unprecedented ways. Chinese exercises simulate Taiwan invasion at unprecedented scale. Iranian threats to close Hormuz represent direct threat to global economy, and coordination between these actions suggests deliberate strategy to create multiple simultaneous crises. This revelation about coordinated escalation by rival nuclear powers sent shockwaves through national security establishment because it confirmed worst fears about how Venezuela invasion would enable adversaries to challenge U.S. globally. When multiple nuclear-armed rivals simultaneously escalate in ways that create compound risks, World War III becomes real possibility rather than abstract concern. Now, this isn't the first time we've seen regional conflicts risk cascading into broader wars or great power confrontations. The pattern of escalation from local conflicts exists throughout history. Just think about World War I, which began with Austrian-Hungarian response to Serbian nationalism, but drew in Germany, Russia, France, and Britain through alliance commitments and escalation dynamics. Regional conflict in Balkans cascaded into global war that killed millions. The risk of cascade was underestimated until it was too late. Then there was Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, which brought United States and Soviet Union to brink of nuclear war over Soviet missiles in Cuba. The crisis demonstrated how local confrontations can escalate to nuclear brink when great powers have competing interests and when miscalculation is possible. The world came closer to nuclear war than most people realized. And let's not forget various Cold War crises, including Korean War, Vietnam War, and numerous Middle East conflicts where superpower involvement created risks of direct U.S.-Soviet confrontation. Each crisis demonstrated how regional conflicts can draw in rival powers in ways that create escalation risks. Now, it looks like Venezuela invasion represents latest case where regional military action has triggered great power competition and escalation that creates genuine World War III risks. Trump's invasion has given Russia, China, and Iran opportunities and justifications for challenging American power simultaneously in ways that compound risks. The pattern of local conflict triggering broader confrontation is manifesting in most dangerous way possible. This pattern is terrifying because it suggests Trump has created the conditions for escalation into global conflict without adequate planning for prevention or management. When multiple nuclear-armed powers coordinate challenges simultaneously, when each sees benefit in escalating, and when mechanisms for crisis management are overwhelmed, the risks of catastrophic war multiply. So what specific incidents and actions beyond strategic deployments demonstrate how dangerous the global situation has become? Well, it all boils down to near-miss incidents, threatening rhetoric, and breakdown of crisis communications that is together create conditions where accident could trigger World War III. The situation broke down like this. First, there have been multiple near-miss incidents where Russian and NATO forces came dangerously close in ways that risked accidental conflict. Russian fighters have intercepted NATO reconnaissance aircraft in aggressive ways that violated safety protocols. Russian submarines have operated near underwater communication cables in ways that raise concerns about sabotage. And there have been at least 3 incidents where Russian and NATO naval vessels came within dangerous proximity in Baltic and Black Seas. Each incident creates risk that accident or miscalculation triggers exchange that escalates. The near-miss incidents are particularly dangerous because they occur at operational level, where individual commanders make split-second decisions without time for political consultation. When aggressive maneuvering creates collision risk, or when defensive systems lock on to potential threats, the risk of accidental shooting increases. Multiple incidents compound risks exponentially. Second, rhetoric from Russian, Chinese, and Iranian leaders has become increasingly threatening and has included thinly veiled nuclear threats. Russian officials have reminded audiences that Russia possesses nuclear weapons capable of destroying any adversary. Chinese officials have warned that reunification with Taiwan is non-negotiable, regardless of U.S. objections. Iranian officials have threatened devastating response if American forces attack Iranian interests. The threatening rhetoric creates psychology where backing down appears weakness and where escalation appears necessary to maintain credibility. Third, crisis communication mechanisms that existed to prevent miscalculation during Cold War have broken down or aren't being used. The hotline between Washington and Moscow has been used less during current crisis than during past confrontations. Communication between U.S. and Chinese militaries has been reduced rather than increased despite higher tensions. And coordination between U.S. and regional powers facing threats has been inadequate. The breakdown of communication means misunderstandings and accidents are more likely and less likely to be resolved before escalation. As these dangerous dynamics have intensified through March, the risk of World War III has grown from theoretical concern to immediate possibility. Each near-miss incident increases chances of actual collision. Each threatening statement raises psychological pressure for escalation, and each communication failure increases risk that accidents spiral into broader conflict before they can be managed. But here's where things got even more dangerous for global stability. Some American allies have begun questioning whether U.S. security guarantees are reliable given American struggles in Venezuela and given that Trump has created the crisis that threatens to draw them into conflict they didn't choose. When allies question American reliability while simultaneously facing enhanced threats from nuclear rivals, the alliance structures that maintained stability for decades begin to fracture. The global order that prevented World War III for generations is destabilizing. This was the moment when global firestorm became potential civilizational catastrophe, when nuclear-armed powers coordinate challenges, when near-miss incidents multiply, when rhetoric becomes threatening, when communications break down, and when alliances fracture. The mechanisms that prevented World War III for 70 years fail. Trump's Venezuela invasion has created exactly those conditions. When multiple simultaneous factors create compound risks of World War III, when each factor reinforces others to create escalation spiral. When leaders lack clear paths to de-escalation, the probability of catastrophic conflict increases dramatically. Current situation contains all these factors at once. In Trump's world, where American military action carries no consequences and where rivals always back down, the possibility that Venezuela invasion would trigger coordinated responses creating World War III risk apparently wasn't seriously considered. But in real world of great power competition, provocative actions enable rivals to challenge American power in dangerous ways. Now, this left Trump facing impossible situation where his Venezuela invasion has created global crisis he cannot manage. On one side, withdrawing from Venezuela might reduce some tensions, but would be seen as American defeat that emboldens rivals to additional challenges. Trump cannot accept humiliation of withdrawal under pressure. Continuing Venezuela operations maintains and intensifies pressures from rival powers, creating compound World War III risks. On the flip side, responding militarily to Russian, Chinese, and Iranian challenges would require confronting multiple nuclear-armed powers simultaneously in their regions of strength. U.S. lacks capacity for such confrontation without risking escalation to nuclear conflict, but not responding makes American deterrence appear hollow and encourages additional challenges. The impossible situation Trump faces is that his Venezuela invasion has created a global crisis where every option involves either accepting defeat or risking World War III. Withdrawal is politically unacceptable. Continuation intensifies global crisis, and military response risks nuclear war. There are no good options. So Trump is trapped in the crisis of his own making, where rival nuclear powers coordinate challenges that grow more severe daily. According to national security officials, there's genuine alarm about World War III, the prospects, and about lack of clear strategy for de-escalation. Crisis management procedures are overwhelmed by multiple simultaneous challenges. At the same time, Russia, China, and Iran continue escalating their challenges in coordinated ways. Each sees opportunity to advance interests while America is overstretched. Each benefits from demonstrating that American power can be contested, and coordination between them multiplies pressure on us. The global firestorm intensifies rather than moderating. This whole scenario represents how reckless military actions can trigger cascading international crises that threaten global catastrophe. Trump's Venezuela invasion has sparked the firestorm that brings World War III from abstract possibility, concrete danger. The crisis threatens not just American interests, but human civilization. Those who study nuclear risks and great power conflict have been sounding alarms about current situation representing most dangerous moment in decades. They point to multiple compounding factors: coordination between rival powers, breakdown of crisis management mechanisms, and Trump's inability to de-escalate as creating genuine World War III probability. Meanwhile, implications of global firestorm extend beyond immediate crisis to permanent damage to international stability. Trust between great powers that enabled cooperation on preventing conflict has been destroyed. Arms control frameworks that limited nuclear risks are collapsing, and the psychology of restraint that prevented World War III is being replaced by willingness to contemplate conflict. Trump's invasion has not just created immediate crisis, but has damaged foundations of global stability. Things became even more alarming when intelligence reports suggested that Russian and Chinese militaries were conducting joint planning exercises, exploring coordination in the potential conflict with the United States. When rival nuclear powers plan joint operations against America, when they explore coordination in actual war scenarios, World War III has moved from possibility to planned contingency. When adversaries plan how to fight America together, when coordination extends beyond diplomatic to operational military level, when scenarios being gamed involve nuclear weapons, the situation has progressed beyond crisis to pre-war planning. That's where Trump's Venezuela invasion has brought the world. And let me tell you, historians may look back at Trump's Venezuela invasion as the action that triggered World War III. The current crisis escalates into actual conflict. The reckless military action that sparked global firestorm may be remembered. As the decision that ended human civilization, the stakes could not possibly be higher. Nuclear weapons experts and international security scholars have warned that current situation represents unprecedented danger because it combines multiple nuclear powers, coordinating challenges, near-miss incidents, creating accident risks, breakdown of communication mechanisms, and leadership that appears unable to comprehend or manage the crisis they created. According to these experts, what makes current crisis particularly dangerous is that Trump seems not to understand the World War III risks his actions have created, that his administration lacks coherent strategy for de-escalation, and that rival powers appear willing to push confrontation further than U.S. has historically accepted. The combination of American provocation meeting rival power coordination creates this perfect storm for escalation into global conflict. So let's break down what global firestorm sparked by Venezuela invasion means, because this represents existential threat to human civilization. First up is immediate World War III risk. Multiple nuclear-armed powers are simultaneously challenging the United States in ways that create compound escalation risks. Near-miss incidents multiply. Threatening rhetoric intensifies. Communications break down. An accident or miscalculation could trigger cascading conflict. The probability of actual World War III has increased dramatically. The global crisis also demonstrates that American military actions have consequences that can threaten American survival. Trump's Venezuela invasion has enabled rivals to coordinate challenges that collectively threaten the United States and its allies. The costs of American adventurism include risks of nuclear war that endangers American civilization. Now let's touch on what this means for international stability long term. Even if immediate crisis is somehow resolved without war, the damage to frameworks that maintain stability is permanent. Trust is destroyed, arms control collapses, and willingness to contemplate major war has been normalized. The world is permanently more dangerous because of Trump's Venezuela invasion. The crisis also affects American alliances fundamentally. Allies questioned American judgment in launching Venezuela invasion. Now they question whether American actions will draw them into World War III, and they didn't choose. Alliance solidarity erodes when protected states fear protectors' recklessness endangers them. NATO and Asian alliances are fracturing under pressure. There's also a question of whether humanity survives Trump's Venezuela invasion. If current crisis escalates into nuclear war between major powers, human civilization ends. That outcome is now realistically possible because Trump launched military operation without considering consequences. The existential stakes make this the most important crisis in human history. Looking ahead, if humanity survives this crisis, Trump's Venezuela invasion will be remembered as a moment when American recklessness brought a world to brink of annihilation. Future generations, if they exist, will study how one leader's catastrophic judgment created conditions for potential human extinction. The historical judgment will be devastating. So here's the deal. The United States invasion of Venezuela has sparked global firestorm that has brought nuclear-armed rivals into coordinated confrontation with America, created multiple simultaneous crises that compound World War III risks and produce the most dangerous internationally situation in generations, with genuine possibility of nuclear conflict that would end human civilization. This isn't just about difficult international relations or elevated tensions. This is about coordinated challenges by Russia, China, and Iran that create genuine World War III probability, about near-miss incidents and breakdown of crisis management creating accident risks, and about Trump's inability to de-escalate situation he created through reckless military action. If current crisis escalates into actual conflict between nuclear powers, if accidents or miscalculations trigger exchanges that spiral into broader war, if Trump's Venezuela invasion proves to be the decision that ended human civilization, then everything we care about disappears because one leader's catastrophic judgment sparked the firestorm that consumed the world. It's about whether humanity can survive American recklessness, whether crisis management can prevent escalation despite overwhelming pressures, and whether leaders find wisdom to step back from brink before it's too late. So keep watching this global firestorm, because the situation grows more dangerous daily and could determine whether human civilization survives. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because developments in this crisis could literally determine survival of humanity, and because understanding how close we are to World War III matters more than anything else possibly could. This is a story of how one invasion sparked firestorm that threatens everything.